An unexpected request. Marcus Stone stood behind his mahogany desk, staring at the cream-colored envelope that had arrived with his morning mail. The elegant script across the front bore his name in gold lettering, and he already knew what lay inside. Another wedding invitation. Another reminder of what seemed to perpetually elude him despite his vast fortune. At 34, Marcus had built a technology empire worth over $3 billion. His software solutions powered half the world's financial institutions, and his penthouse office on the 42nd floor of the Stone Tower commanded a breathtaking view of downtown Seattle. Yet as he opened the invitation from his college roommate James Patterson, he felt the familiar hollow ache in his chest. "Mr. Stone?" The gentle voice belonged to Sophia Reed, his executive assistant of 4 years. She entered carrying his afternoon coffee. Black, no sugar, exactly as he preferred it. "The quarterly board meeting has been moved to Thursday. I've already updated your calendar." Marcus watched as she moved with her characteristic quiet efficiency, placing the coffee precisely where he liked it, straightening papers that were already perfectly aligned. Sophia was 28, with warm brown hair she always kept in a neat bun and intelligent green eyes that seemed to notice everything. She wore simple but elegant clothing that somehow looked expensive on her petite frame, though he knew her salary, while generous, wouldn't support truly luxury items. "Sophia," he said suddenly, "do you have plans this Saturday evening?" She looked up from her tablet, surprised by the personal question. In 4 years, their conversations had remained strictly professional, though Marcus had often caught himself noticing the way she smiled when she thought no one was looking, or how she always remembered his preferences for everything from coffee to restaurant reservations. "Nothing particular, sir. Did you need me to work late?" Marcus held up the invitation. "James is getting married. It's going to be quite the affair. 500 guests, probably half the Seattle elite. The invitation requests I bring a guest." Sophia waited patiently, but he could see curiosity flickering in her eyes. "I was wondering if you might consider accompanying me. Strictly professional, of course. I'd compensate you for your time, arrange for appropriate attire, whatever you need." The silence stretched between them. Marcus watched as various emotions crossed Sophia's face. Surprise, uncertainty, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "As your date?" she asked carefully. "As my companion for the evening. I realize it's an unusual request, but you're the only person I trust to handle the situation with grace. These events can be challenging when you're alone." Marcus didn't mention the real reason he dreaded going alone: the whispered conversations about Seattle's most eligible bachelor who couldn't seem to find love, the well-meaning introductions to daughters and nieces, the pitying looks from married couples who saw his wealth but sensed his loneliness. Sophia set down her tablet and walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. Marcus found himself studying her reflection in the glass, wondering what thoughts were running through her mind. "There are things about me you don't know, Mr. Stone," she said quietly. "My background could complicate things if people start asking questions." "What kind of complications?" She turned back to face him, and Marcus saw a vulnerability in her expression that he'd never noticed before, the kind that could affect your reputation. Marcus stood and moved closer, careful to maintain professional distance. "Sophia, I've built my career on taking calculated risks. Whatever concerns you have about your past, I'm confident we can handle them together." She studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing something crucial in her mind. "All right," she said finally. "I'll go with you to the wedding." Relief flooded through Marcus so powerfully that he had to steady himself against his desk. "Thank you. I'll arrange everything, the dress, accessories, transportation. You won't have to worry about any details." As Sophia gathered her things to leave, she paused at the door. "Mr. Stone, why me? Surely you could find someone more appropriate for such a high-profile event." Marcus looked at this woman who had quietly become the most important person in his daily life, who anticipated his needs before he voiced them, who treated him like a person rather than a walking bank account. "Because you're the only one who sees me as Marcus, not just as a fortune with a face attached." After she left, Marcus sank into his chair, wondering what he had just set in motion. Saturday was only 3 days away, and he had no idea that those 3 days would change everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and the woman who had been right beside him all along. The morning of the wedding arrived with Seattle's typical drizzle painting gray streaks across the windows of Marcus's penthouse. He had arranged for Sophia to spend the day at the city's most exclusive salon, sparing no expense on what he told himself was simply a business investment. Yet as he adjusted his platinum cufflinks for the third time, his hands trembled with an anticipation he hadn't felt since his first major acquisition. Sophia had left the office early Friday, accepting the garment bag containing the midnight blue silk gown he'd personally selected. The color would complement her eyes, the stylist had assured him, though Marcus hadn't admitted he'd already memorized every shade of green that flickered in Sophia's gaze depending on her mood. His phone buzzed with updates throughout the day. Hair appointment complete. Makeup session finished. Final fitting approved. Each message sent an unexpected thrill through his chest, as if he were unwrapping a gift he'd been waiting years to receive. At 6:30, Marcus's private elevator chimed, and he turned toward the sound with his breath caught in his throat. When the doors opened, the woman who stepped out was unmistakably Sophia, yet transformed into someone who seemed to have emerged from his most secret dreams. Her hair cascaded in soft waves past her shoulders, no longer constrained by professional necessity. The midnight blue gown hugged her curves with mathematical precision, revealing graceful shoulders and a silhouette that made his mouth go dry. But it was her confidence that stopped him completely. Gone was the careful deference of their office interactions, replaced by something luminous and self-assured. "You're staring," Sophia said, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I apologize," Marcus managed, though he couldn't look away. "You look absolutely stunning." A blush crept across her cheeks, and Marcus felt something shift between them, like a door opening that couldn't be closed again. The stylists were very thorough. "Though I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life, you're wearing exactly what you deserve to wear," Marcus said, offering his arm. "Shall we?" In the elevator descending to the parking garage, Marcus caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. Sophia was studying him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," Marcus admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. "Not about the wedding, but about what?" He looked at her directly, abandoning the careful professional distance he'd maintained for 4 years. "About the fact that I can barely think straight when you look at me like that." The elevator fell silent, except for the whisper of machinery. Sophia's lips parted slightly, and Marcus saw his own desire reflected in her eyes. The space between them seemed to shrink without either of them moving. "Marcus," she whispered, his first name sounding foreign yet perfect on her lips. The elevator chimed their arrival, breaking the spell. They stepped apart, both breathing unsteadily, as his driver held open the door of the waiting Bentley. During the drive to the Four Seasons, Marcus found himself stealing glances at Sophia's profile in the passing streetlights. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, but he could see the tension in her posture. "Tell me about these complications you mentioned," he said gently. "About your past." Sophia was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible above the engine's purr. "I haven't always been Sophia Reed," she said. "That name. This life I've built working for you, it's real, but it's not complete." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What do you mean?" 5 years ago, I was someone else entirely, someone with expectations and obligations I couldn't fulfill. I ran away from a life that was suffocating me, from people who saw me as a commodity rather than a person. The parallel to his own experiences wasn't lost on him. "That's why you understand," he said quietly. Sophia turned to look at him, and in the dim light, her eyes held depths he'd never seen before. "Yes, but Marcus, if anyone from my past recognizes me tonight, if they start asking questions, then we'll handle it together," Marcus interrupted. "Whatever happened before doesn't matter to me." But even as he said the words, Marcus felt a whisper of unease. In his experience, the past never stayed buried for long, especially when it involved money, power, or both. The Four Seasons Hotel rose before them like a crystal palace, its windows blazing with warm light. As their car joined the procession of luxury vehicles delivering Seattle's elite to the celebration, Marcus reached across the seat and took Sophia's hand. "Whatever happens tonight," he said, "I'm grateful you're here with me." Sophia squeezed his hand, her touch sending electricity up his arm. "Thank you for seeing me as more than just your assistant." As they stepped out onto the red carpet, camera flashes exploded around them. Marcus felt Sophia tense beside him, but she smiled graciously and moved with poise that suggested she'd navigated such situations before. Another mystery to add to the growing collection. Marcus Stone with mystery companion, he heard a photographer murmur into his headset. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across hundreds of guests. Marcus felt Sophia's hand tighten on his arm as they made their entrance, and he realized that whatever secrets she was hiding, whatever past she was running from, he was already in too deep to care about the consequences. The evening was about to begin, and with it, revelations that would challenge everything Marcus thought he knew about the woman beside him and the feelings he could no longer deny. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons sparkled like a constellation brought to Earth. Hundreds of guests moved through the space in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, their conversations creating a sophisticated symphony punctuated by the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Marcus guided Sophia through the crowd, acutely aware of the appreciative glances she drew from every direction. "Marcus!" James Patterson appeared beside them, resplendent in his wedding tuxedo, his face beaming with joy. "You actually came. And you brought—" His eyes widened as he took in Sophia. "My God, you've been holding out on us." "James, this is Sophia Reed," Marcus said, his hand settling protectively on the small of her back. The gesture sent warmth spiraling through both of them. "Sophia, James Patterson, the groom, and my oldest friend." Sophia extended her hand with grace that impressed Marcus. "Congratulations on your wedding. It's absolutely magical." "The pleasure is entirely mine," James replied, kissing her hand with theatrical gallantry. "I have to say, Marcus has excellent taste. You're absolutely radiant." Before Marcus could respond, James's mother appeared at his elbow. Margaret Patterson had been trying to marry off Marcus to suitable daughters for years, her sharp blue eyes always calculating connections and advantages. "So this is the mysterious woman who's captured our Marcus's attention," Margaret said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I don't believe I know your family, dear." "Are you from Seattle?" Marcus felt Sophia stiffen almost imperceptibly beside him. "I've lived here for several years," Sophia replied smoothly, "though I grew up on the East Coast." "How fascinating." "Which family?" "I know practically everyone of consequence from Boston to Charleston." "Mother," James warned quietly, but Margaret continued her interrogation with the persistence of a seasoned socialite. "I'm sure you do," Sophia said diplomatically. "Shall we find our seats? I believe the ceremony is about to begin." As they moved toward the chapel area, Marcus leaned close to Sophia's ear. "You handled that perfectly," he murmured, his breath stirring the fine hairs at her nape. She shivered at his proximity. "I've had practice deflecting questions," she replied, then caught herself, as if she'd revealed more than intended. The ceremony was a fairy tale of ivory silk and white roses. Marcus found himself watching Sophia's profile more than the bride and groom. Her eyes held a wistful quality as she witnessed the exchange of vows, and when the couple kissed to seal their union, he saw her fingers brush away what might have been a tear. Without thinking, Marcus reached over and covered her hand with his. She looked at him in surprise, then turned her palm up to intertwine their fingers. The simple gesture felt more intimate than any kiss. "May I have this dance?" Marcus asked as the reception began and the orchestra struck up a waltz. "I should warn you," Sophia said as they moved on to the dance floor. "I learned ballroom dancing from online videos this week." Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Then we'll improvise together." As he pulled her into his arms, Sophia fit against him as if she belonged there. They moved together with surprising natural rhythm, her head coming to rest just below his shoulder. Marcus could smell her perfume, something subtle and intoxicating that he'd never noticed in the office. "You're full of surprises," he said softly against her ear. "You have no idea," Sophia replied, and something in her tone made him pull back to study her face. Before he could question her further, the music shifted to something more contemporary, and other couples joined them on the dance floor. But Marcus kept Sophia close, unwilling to break the spell that seemed to surround them. "Tell me something real about yourself," Marcus said as they swayed together. "Something I don't know from your employment file." Sophia was quiet for a moment, considering. "I used to paint," she said finally. "Watercolors mostly, landscapes and portraits. I haven't touched a brush in 5 years. Why did you stop?" Her expression grew distant. "Someone told me it was a waste of time, that I should focus on more practical pursuits." Marcus felt anger flare on her behalf. "They were wrong. You should paint again. Maybe I will," she said, looking up at him with something vulnerable and hopeful in her eyes. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself falling deeper under Sophia's spell. She laughed at his stories about early business disasters, challenged his opinions about the art displayed around the ballroom, and somehow made him feel like the most interesting man in the room rather than simply the richest. "I need some air," Sophia said during a particularly crowded moment when they'd been surrounded by curious socialites asking pointed questions about their relationship. They stepped onto the hotel's terrace, where Seattle's skyline glittered beyond the railing. The night air was cool against their heated skin, and finally they were alone. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, leaning against the stone balustrade. "For what?" "For making this bearable. For being here with me. For letting me see this side of you." Sophia moved to stand beside him, her bare shoulder brushing his arm. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you about my past. About who I really want. Well. If it isn't little Sophia Ashworth?" They both froze at the cultured voice that cut through the night air. A tall man emerged from the shadows of the terrace, his dark hair slicked back and his cold gray eyes holding a predatory gleam that made Marcus instinctively step closer to Sophia. "Hello, Vincent," Sophia said, her voice suddenly flat and lifeless. "It's been what, 5 years? You look absolutely divine, darling. Success certainly suits you." Vincent's gaze moved appreciatively over her gown. "Though I must admit, I'm curious about this new surname. Reed, wasn't it? Very creative." Marcus felt Sophia go rigid beside him. "Vincent Ashworth." The name clicked into place with sickening clarity. "What do you want, Vincent?" Sophia asked, "Just catching up with my former fiancé. Surely you're not going to be rude and refuse to introduce me to your companion?" The word fiancé hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked at Sophia, seeing her pale in the moonlight, and felt the carefully constructed evening beginning to crumble around them. Vincent extended a manicured hand to Marcus. "Vincent Ashworth. Sophia and I have quite an intimate history together." As Marcus reluctantly shook the offered hand, he realized that the past Sophia had been running from had finally caught up with them, and the night that had promised everything was about to reveal truths that might destroy them both. The tension on the terrace was suffocating. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as Vincent's words sank in. "For mes fiancés." The woman he'd been falling in love with for 4 years had been engaged to this predator, standing before them with his cruel smile. "I can see this is news to you. Mr. Stone," Vincent continued, clearly enjoying Marcus's shock. "Did our dear Sophia not mention that she left me at the altar?" "Well, technically 3 days before the altar, but who's counting?" "We should go back inside," Sophia said quickly, but Vincent stepped into their path. "Not so fast, darling. We have unfinished business to discuss, like the small matter of the $43 million you disappeared with." Marcus's world tilted dangerously. $43 million! Sophia had never mentioned any family money. She lived modestly, drove a used Honda, wore simple clothes. Nothing about her lifestyle suggested wealth. "I didn't steal anything," Sophia said quietly, her voice gaining strength. "That money was legally mine." Vincent laughed, the sound like broken glass. "Technically, yes. But morally, Running away in the middle of the night after our engagement announcement, liquidating your entire trust fund, and vanishing without a trace? That's hardly sporting, Sophia. That wasn't an engagement announcement, Sophia replied, her composure cracking. That was you selling me to your business partners like livestock? I heard what you said to them, Vincent, about how marrying me would give you access to the Ashworth real estate portfolio and my father's political connections. Marcus's mind reeled. Ashworth. He knew that name. One of the most powerful real estate dynasties on the East Coast. Richard Ashworth had died 5 years ago, leaving behind a massive fortune and— "You're Sophia Ashworth," Marcus said quietly. "Richard Ashworth's daughter." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "I was. I gave up that name when I gave up that life. Gave up $43 million to work as a secretary." Vincent sneered. "Tell me, Stone, did you know your trusted assistant is worth more than some small countries? Makes you wonder what she's really after, doesn't it?" The implications hit Marcus like successive hammer blows. Everything he thought he knew about Sophia was a lie. Her modest lifestyle, her genuine appreciation for her salary, her seeming lack of ulterior motives, all of it built on deception. "Get out," Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. Vincent raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, friend. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to make a deal. I'm not interested in any deals with you." "Oh, but you will be. See, I've done quite well for myself these past 5 years, but I've recently encountered some cash flow issues with my latest development project. I need investors, respectable ones with sterling reputations." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "You're here to blackmail us." Such an ugly word. "I prefer to think of it as a business proposition. Invest $50 million in my resort development, and I'll disappear from both your lives forever." "Refuse, and I'll be forced to share some very interesting information with the media about Seattle's tech king and his secretive heiress assistant." "You bastard," Sophia whispered. Now, darling, business is business. Something your boyfriend should understand better than anyone." Marcus looked at Sophia, this beautiful stranger who had been hiding in plain sight for 4 years. "Is it true? About the money?" She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, but Marcus, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because right now I'm wondering if everything between us has been an elaborate con. Get close to the lonely billionaire, gain his trust, then what? Industrial espionage? A harassment lawsuit?" "Stop it," Sophia said desperately. "You know me better than that, do I?" "Because the woman I thought I knew wouldn't have hidden her entire identity for 4 years. Vincent watched their argument with evident satisfaction. "Trouble in paradise? How disappointing! But my offer stands, Stone. $50 million, and you never see me again." "I need time to think," Marcus said finally. "You have until Monday morning," Vincent replied, straightening his cufflinks. "After that, I start making phone calls to some very interested journalists." After Vincent disappeared back into the ballroom, Marcus and Sophia stood in devastated silence. The fairy tale evening had shattered completely, leaving only questions and betrayal in its wake. "Please let me explain," Sophia began. Marcus turned to look at her, this woman who had deceived him so completely. "Explain what?" "How you've been lying to me for 4 years. How you made me believe you were different from everyone else who wants something from me." "I never wanted anything from you," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "That's why I hid who I was. I knew exactly what would happen, what's happening right now. You'd look at me differently. You'd question my motives. Can you blame me?" Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very small in her elegant gown. "The money is gone, Marcus. All of it. I gave every penny away because I never wanted it in the first place." Marcus stared at her. "What?" "Children's scholarships, women's shelters, medical bills for families facing bankruptcy. I spent 2 years systematically donating my entire inheritance because I wanted to earn something that was mine. I wanted to prove I could survive on my own merit." The words hit Marcus like a revelation, but his hurt ran too deep for immediate forgiveness. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me?" "Because I was terrified of losing you," Sophia whispered. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I knew that if you found out about my past, about the money, about Vincent, I knew you'd think I was just another person trying to use you. Marcus felt his heart breaking as he looked at her tear-stained face. Part of him wanted to pull her into his arms and promise that nothing mattered except what they felt for each other. But 4 years of lies was a chasm he didn't know how to cross. I need time to process this, he said finally. And Vincent? Marcus's jaw tightened. Let me worry about Vincent. As they rode back to the city in silence, both lost in their own thoughts, neither realized that the most difficult revelations were yet to come, and that sometimes the greatest love stories began with the complete destruction of everything you thought you knew. Monday morning arrived with Seattle's gray dawn filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus's office. He sat surrounded by documents and laptop screens, the results of a weekend spent researching everything about Sophia Ashworth that money and private investigators could uncover. The picture that emerged both vindicated and devastated him. Sophia had indeed inherited $43 million when her father died, but the investigators had tracked every penny of its disposal. Educational scholarships for underprivileged children, anonymous donations to women's shelters, medical bills paid for families facing bankruptcy. She had systematically given away her entire fortune, while living solely on her secretary's salary. The engagement to Vincent had been arranged by her dying father, a business merger disguised as a marriage. 3 days before the wedding, after overhearing Vincent discuss her assets with potential investors, she had liquidated everything and vanished. Marcus rubbed his exhausted eyes as his office door opened at precisely 8 o'clock. Sophia entered wearing a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back in its familiar professional style. But he could see the toll the weekend had taken. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual confident posture had been replaced by resigned defeat. "Good morning, Mr. Stone," she said formally, setting his coffee on the desk without meeting his gaze. "Sit down." "Sophia," Marcus said quietly. She remained standing. "If you're going to fire me, please just do it quickly." "I'm not firing you. I want to understand." Sophia's composure cracked slightly. "What's to understand? I lied about who I was. Vincent was right about everything except my motivations." Marcus stood and moved around his desk to face her. "Was he right about the money?" "You mean the money I supposedly stole?" Sophia's voice turned bitter. "Yes, I took every penny of my inheritance. And yes, I gave every penny away because I never wanted blood money in the first place. Why didn't you tell me?" Sophia finally looked up at him, and Marcus saw years of pain and fear reflected in her eyes. "Because I knew exactly what would happen. The same thing that's happening right now. You'd wonder if I was using you, if my feelings were real, if I had some hidden agenda." "I know where the money went," Marcus said softly. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" "I had investigators trace every transaction. The children's scholarships, the women's shelters, the medical bills. You gave it all away to help people who needed it." Tears began streaming down Sophia's face. "You weren't supposed to find out about that." Marcus stepped closer, his anger from Saturday night transforming into something deeper. "Why, Sophia? Why give up $43 million to work as my assistant?" "Because I wanted to earn something that was truly mine," she whispered. "My whole life, everything I had was because of who my father was or what I was worth on paper. I wanted to discover who I could be if I started with nothing. And Vincent?" Sophia's expression hardened. "Vincent saw me as a business acquisition. He used to tell his friends that marrying me was like buying a company with excellent assets and established connections. The night before our engagement party, I overheard him negotiating development deals he planned to pursue once he had access to my father's political network." Marcus felt his heart breaking for the woman standing before him. "So you ran?" "I ran to New York with nothing but the clothes on my back and a new identity. I worked temporary jobs for 2 years, learning skills, proving to myself that I could survive on my own merit. When the position with your company opened, I applied as Sophia Reed because I wanted the job based on my abilities, not my connections. For 4 years, you've been living on just your salary? It was enough. More than enough. I had everything I needed." She hesitated. "I had you." The confession hung between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling as he looked into her eyes and saw the truth written there. Before he could respond, his office door burst open. Vincent Ashworth strode in without permission, his expensive suit immaculate and his predatory smile firmly in place. "I trust you've had time to consider my proposal," Vincent said, settling into a chair uninvited. "Get out of my office," Marcus said coldly. "Now! Now! That's no way to conduct business. I assume you've done your research on our dear Sophia by now. Quite the little philanthropist, isn't she? Gave away her entire fortune to charity while playing secretary. Very noble, if somewhat foolish." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, but Vincent continued relentlessly. "The media would find it fascinating. Runaway heiress working undercover for Seattle's most eligible bachelor. Your stock price might suffer from the scandal, and Sophia would spend years fighting legal battles over breach of contract." "Such a shame." Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. "I'll come with you, Vincent. I'll honor the original engagement contract. Just leave Marcus out of this." "Absolutely not," Marcus said immediately. "It's my mess, Marcus. I won't let you pay for my mistakes." "How touching," Vincent sneered. "But I think Mr. Stone's $50 million is more appealing than damaged goods." Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, calculating risks like any business deal. But this wasn't business. This was about the woman he loved, even if he'd been too scared and hurt to admit it until now. "I have a counteroffer," Marcus said slowly, walking to his safe. He withdrew his checkbook and wrote quickly, then tore off the check and handed it to Vincent. $80 million. Take it and disappear forever. Never contact Sophia again, never speak to the media about any of this, and never return to Seattle. Vincent's eyes widened as he looked at the check. $80 million? More than enough to fund your resort and compensate you for your imaginary losses, but it comes with conditions. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, you transfer all rights to that engagement contract to me, and you leave this building in the next 10 minutes. Sophia gasped. "Marcus, you can't. That's too much money." Marcus never took his eyes off Vincent. "It's not about the money. It's about buying your freedom." Vincent studied the check, clearly calculating whether to push for more. But $80 million was beyond his wildest dreams. "Deal," he said finally, pocketing the check. "Pleasure doing business with you both." After Vincent left, Marcus and Sophia stood in silence, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. "You just paid $80 million for me," Sophia said in disbelief. "I paid $80 million for your freedom," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. I have to find a way to pay you back." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "There is a way. How?" "Stay. Not as my employee, not out of obligation, but because you want to. Help me figure out what this thing between us really is." Sophia's composure finally broke completely. She collapsed into Marcus's arms, sobbing against his chest as he held her tightly. "I love you," she whispered. "I've loved you for so long, but I was terrified you'd leave once you knew the truth." Marcus tilted her chin up to look at him. "The truth is what makes you extraordinary, Sophia. Your courage to start over, your compassion for others, your strength to survive. That's the woman I fell in love with." When he kissed her, it was desperate and hungry, full of 4 years of suppressed longing and the relief of finally acknowledging what had always been between them. When they finally broke apart, Sophia smiled through her tears. "So what happens now?" Marcus glanced at his desk, covered in contracts and reports that suddenly seemed insignificant. "Now we take some time off. I know a place where we can figure out what comes next. Your shareholders won't approve of you disappearing. Let me worry about my shareholders. Right now, I have more important things to focus on." As Marcus held Sophia close, watching the Seattle skyline through his office windows, he realized that for the first time in his adult life, he felt truly wealthy. Not because of his bank account or business empire, but because he had found something money couldn't buy. A love worth fighting for. The lonely billionaire was lonely no more. The runaway heiress had finally found her home. Together, they faced a future filled with possibilities neither had dared to imagine, built on the foundation of truth, sacrifice, and a love that had been growing quietly for 4 years, waiting for the courage to bloom. Sometimes the greatest treasures were hidden in plain sight, disguised as ordinary moments between two people who needed each other more than they knew.